Well, hello friends, and welcome to Ask Zach. Today we are going to talk about the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society and the convention that they put on every year here in Nashville. I actually spoke at the event this year. It was in mid-July, and I was honored to be asked to speak. And I spoke on the influence of Chet Atkins. And there was something that I hit on that I thought was really important. And I'm not going to give the whole, spiel that I did at the convention, but I wanted to hit on something really important about using your influences wisely. And I have a great example of that. And so, going to talk about the convention, going to talk about a highlight of my presentation at the convention. And then we're going to do the book Nook segment. And today we're going to talk about the Pete Anderson book, How to Produce a Record. And so this is a good little book, so I'll give a little review of that at the end of the show. All right, well, first off, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. And I also want to let y'all know that just about every episode of the show has been uploaded as a podcast. So if you want to catch up on past Ask Zach episodes while you're driving around in your car or mowing the lawn or whatever, you can do that now. And so it's on all the major podcast hosting platforms, so you can check those out. So please do so. All right. Well, let's dive in. So recently I got a phone call from the head of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, or CAS, as they say, and he asked that I speak at their event. And I had been aware of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society and the fact that they did this convention in mid-July. And I'd never been to the actual convention, but I'd been to some of the events that they held off-site. So these are down to some parties that a friend of mine had hosted where George Gruen and other, luminaries would be at, and be kind of a pick-and party to a concert that they used to do at the, they always did kind of a finale concert. And one of them was done years ago here in Franklin, a little bit south of Nashville. And I'd gone to that, and it was an amazing show. It had Pat Bergeson and Pete Huttlinger, the late Pete Huttlinger, and also Jack Pearson and Tommy Manuel and others. And I have to say that Jack Pearson stole the show on that. But so I had been to some of the events, but I had never actually attended the show. And so I was attending it and getting to speak, and also ended up playing. So Meagan Taylor Anderson is a good friend of mine, and she is the grandniece of Chet Atkins, and she performs every year at in the nightly concerts. And so she asked me to join her, and so I played mandolin and Telecaster. Did not attempt to play like Chet. That's not my bag, though I love Chet. I was not gonna embarrass myself by trying to play like Chet Atkins in front of a bunch of Chetophiles. And let me just say that at the convention, I really enjoyed getting to meet a lot of you guys that were there, including Tom Rutledge, who sent me this T-shirt, and Brad, who I think is Bender 57. And some other guys that catch the show. So thank you so much for coming up and saying hi and chatting with me. So I spoke, I played at the concert, and when I was initially asked to speak, I felt like, well, I have to talk about Chet Atkins. And as I did research on Chet, and I've done a lot of research on Chet, but digging back in, what came to mind was the influence that Chet Atkins has had on other people, and also some of the unusual influences of Chet Atkins. And we're all aware of probably the influence of Merle Travis or Django Reinhardt or Les Paul, but did you know that the person that influenced Chet to play fingerstyle in the first place was Texas blues guitarist Blind Lemon Jefferson. So yeah, that kind of blew my mind. And then also, as I was reading up on him, it reminded me of just the influence of hardship in our lives. And so Chet had really bad asthma, and he was isolated a lot, and he moved around because his parents had gotten divorced, and he went and lived with his dad for a while down in Georgia. And he had this long period of time where he didn't have any musician friends, and he would just play guitar by himself, and also, of course, the asthma that kept him kind of by himself. And that was really a formative thing as far as his playing, and the fact that he learned finger style and how to play these solo guitar arrangements, because that's what the finger style or it's all about, kind of playing the bass line and the melody and some type of rhythmic thing going on all at the same time. It's all for the guitar to be its own thing, not needing any accompaniment. So then I also talked about the influence of Chet Atkins, and there's, all sorts of obvious ones, but I wanted to talk about a non-obvious one that I think is a great way to frame our influences so that we don't become a pastiche or just a copycat. So I'm just going to play the lick. All right, that was the intro to Son of a Preacher Man, played by Reggie Young, and of course on Dusty Springfield's Dusty in Memphis record. And when I interviewed Reggie, before he passed away, I asked him, I said, where did that lick come from? Because think about that lick. That's unlike anything you've ever heard on an R&B/pop track in your life. And he said, that was me, trying to play like Chet Atkins on an R&B tune. And all of a sudden it made perfect sense. You had the sliding sixth and the open string, the false harmonic, open strings, all these things that were trademark Chet Atkins. And frankly, even though there were other people doing it, most people heard those techniques from Chet. And I was blown away by that. And also, I thought, that is the perfect way to use your influences, to where the only way someone hears the influence is if you pull it out and describe it to them. And so that's what I'm trying to strive for now. Instead of, someone being able to watch me and say, oh, he's playing like James Burton now, or he's playing like so-and-so now, or he's doing whatever, is just to take all those influences and use them in a way in which no one's able to pick it out. Because you take those influences and you put them in kind of, I guess what you'd call unusual circumstances, because you wouldn't think of Chet Atkins necessarily playing on a Dusty Springfield record. Another kind of good example of this is Pete Anderson, who I'm going to talk about in a bit. I love the fact that Pete Anderson said in one of his interviews that he loved it when he was able to sneak in a Freddie King lick. And so many people don't realize that Pete Anderson is a blues guitarist. That's what he was. That's what he was before he, started playing country music, a hardcore blues player from Detroit. And he enjoyed, whether it was on Dwight Yoakam's Little Sister or wherever he could, he loved throwing in blues licks wherever he could, but he would throw them in a way where it would kind of, wasn't obvious. And I think that's the best way to wear your influences. So may we all strive to do that. All right. And just to wrap it up, I really enjoyed being at the Chet Atkins convention. It was a ton of fun. There were so many great players. There were a lot of Gretsch and Mayton and other companies had a booth. There were tons of great guitars to see, tons of great players. A highlight for me was seeing the French Family Band. So that is my friend Stu French. He and his wife and son, whose name is Sonny, have a band, and they performed. They were the kind of the headliner on Friday night at the Chet Atkins event, and they were amazing. They were just ridiculously great. And Janae Fleener, who is the I think she's won the CMA Musician of the Year for the last couple of years. She's a great fiddler, and I met her many years ago. We worked together out on the road. She sat in with them, and it was just an amazing show. If you ever hear of the French Family Band, you need to check them out. In fact, I'll put a link to one of their performances. You know, they've been on the Opry, and they've been on a number of television shows. So, all right, time for the Book Nook. So Pete Anderson recently published this book. It's called How to Produce a Record, A Player's Philosophy for Making a Great Recording. This is a great, fun book. It's, not too thick. And before you start thinking it's a how-to as far as like technically how to make a record, it's not that. This is really kind of the psychology and philosophy, kind of big picture of making a record. How to organize your thoughts, how to do the process, and also a lot of it is how to deal with people. And I think it's really well done. And going through the book, I could really see where there were times where I worked with producers that really exemplified a lot of these things, and then times where inexperienced guys didn't exemplify this. And the producer's job is really to make the process as easy as possible and try to keep people relaxed, and to get it done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And so, this is not a book for just a Pete Anderson fan, because he's not really talking about guitar stuff in general. I mean, he talks a touch, but it's really about how to handle yourself, how to organize things, and how to treat people so that you are able to get a good performance out of them. Again, a lot of it is about the psychology of being a producer, even to the point of he even has one chapter on a really funny thing that's where you let the artist have one of their friends or husband or wife or whatever perform on the record, and then you replace it and say it was them, because that happens more than we think. And that way they're able to say, yeah, my friend, played drums on this, and actually, it ended up being someone else. Yeah, a lot of really great tidbits, and again, it's a pretty quick read and well done. So I'll put a link to that in the description also. All right, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And if you're a Chet Atkins fan, then you ought to plan on coming out to Nashville mid-July next year. And you can find out more at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society online. All right, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.